Ladies and gentlemen, it's the first edition of NCAA Lacrosse Gameday on Lacrosse Radio Network on Live 365 for Inside Lacrosse We Trust. My name is Andrew Goldberg, and I am joined by John Iadevaia. I totally screwed your name up, John. I know we went over this before. I'm sorry, but John, how are you doing early this Saturday morning?
We're doing splendid this morning. For the listeners out there, the name is very Italian, John Alfonso Iadevaia. 6 vowels in my last name, so understand the complexity of that.
Yeah, John, this certainly won't be the first or the last time I screw up your name. I'm sorry. As a co-host, I should probably be better prepared with that, but I apologize for the butchering of the name.
We're all good.
Yeah. So John, John is writer for Inside Lacrosse as well as In Lacrosse We Trust. I am your host. You've heard me on MLL Roundtable with Brendan Stout on Monday nights around 6 p.m. So obviously we're going to be here, hopefully every Saturday morning talking all the hottest lacrosse news for In Lacrosse We Trust. Hopefully I was talking with John before. Maybe we can start traveling, pulling a little Lee Corso and Kirk Herb Street, and maybe me or you can don some mascot heads. How do you feel about that?
I wouldn't mind that, heading out to some places, especially some of the new programs right now. Spending the weekend in Boston to see how the Terriers do, putting on, their nice costumes out there would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I kind of want to put on the Ohio State Buckeye head or like the Johns Hopkins Blue Jay thing. I mean, it might be smelly, but I think it'd be kind of cool.
I'd love to be there for Ohio State, Michigan, especially once that Big Ten conference starts up. Those are going to be some pretty nice game day festivities, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, man, that'd be awesome. Little, maybe we can jump in the lake with them. I know they do that before the football game, but that'd be fun.
A good place. I know Lehigh actually gets some pretty nice attendance out there. They have a cool mascot. I forgot what it is. I think they're. I keep forgetting it. Their mascot's a bird, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they're the Hawks.
Mountain Hawks.
Yeah, Mountain Hawks. I visited there once. Very hilly place.
So.
But anyway, so first edition of NCAA Lax Gameday. We have a great show lined up for you guys today for our listeners. First things first, we'll analyze the Cornell scandal. A lot of controversy over that, which we will discuss in a little bit. Then we'll kind of look at the new programs joining Division I lacrosse, which is awesome for the growth of lacrosse, and then we'll look at conference realignment and Inside Lacrosse's, face-off edition of their top 20. We'll look at whether we agree with the rankings, where we disagree, who's ranked too low, too high, whatever else. And then at 11:30, we're pleased to have our first guest, popping the cherry here of guest is Tom Peace of Top Lax Recruits. We'll talk to him probably in that third segment or second segment whenever we get on at 11:30. He'll be on with us at 11:30. He's from Top Lacrosse Recruits. They cover, obviously, all lacrosse recruits, so we'll talk to him about Maryland's #1 incoming lacrosse class, as well as Jordan Evans, who, he was given number 22 as the next Casey Powell, but we'll discuss that later. First things first, as I just said, Cornell lacrosse, I mean, John, quite the circumstances there, don't you think?
Quite the fall from grace, if you ask me, honestly. I mean, what was it, about over half a year ago now, they were competing in the Final Four against Duke, and now, over the past few months, they lose a big senior class, so a sort of rebuild coming up this season. Then you have the whole fall scandal that happened with the hazing, and they lose all their fall scrimmages. And then out of nowhere, DeLuca just gets fired. And the school hasn't given even a reason or a legitimate reason to this day why that's happened.
Right. So for our listeners that just don't follow lacrosse, fall ball, I mean, completely understand considering it's football season. Lacrosse is kind of low on the totem pole in terms of what you're going to follow. So let me give the timeline, and then we'll really discuss. So on September 12th, the Department of Athletics received information that new team members, basically the freshmen, had been hazed by the upperclassmen. What specifically happened, They were expected to perform, according to the report, expected to perform menial tasks, including chores and other duties that went above and beyond those expected of general membership. Specifically, they expected to spend a large amount of time socializing and doing lacrosse-related activities, which is to be understood. You want to build team camaraderie, but the real problem here was, I guess what happens when you go on a team. I play lacrosse, we'll go right into that after, but they challenge, basically the seniors, or mostly upperclassmen, challenge all the freshmen to drinking a large amount of beer in a competition against, other team members. And they were in a circle, the freshmen, tied together with a piece of string around their belt loops, which is not really a big deal. And then they consumed a large quantity of alcohol until some of them proceeded to vomit. Then the next day, literally the next day, it gets, the Department of Athletics rules that the team will be suspended for fall ball. So swift action there, meaning that they could practice the normal amount of allotted times that they're allowed to as Division I program during the fall ball session, but they cannot play in any games. And they were supposed to play, obviously, their alumni game, as well as against the Israeli and Iroquois national teams. Instead, Syracuse took their place. So then we fast forward. So nothing happens. They practice, they do whatever, go through weight training, and then November 14th, literally 2 months after, Cornell breaks the news that they're firing head coach Ben DeLuca, citing new leadership being required from AD Andy Noel. So therefore, since Ben DeLuca was fired, Matt Kerwick, the assistant coach, he was only there for a year. He previously coached at Hobart and Jacksonville, so now he is the coach there. And so now that brings us to the present. Right now, we are at the holidays, right after fall ball, and right before everyone kind of reports for the real meat, the real preseason grind coming in January. So a little background on DeLuca: he was 37-11 overall, 14-2 in the Ivy League, fantastic record, and they went to the Final Four last year. So John, I don't want to be at Cornell, but this kind of doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, right?
It's not fair for all parties, in my opinion, really, because really the players are the ones that are going to get hurt by it. Because despite what happened, the school, first of all, the school did the right action for the whole hazing incident, because you can't have that happen. It happens in all colleges. We know that to some sort of degree there is some sort of hazing, but the school did the right course of action that this was made public. But the thing that's odd about the whole thing with the whole DeLuca thing is there's been whispers that the management, the school management, the sports department has not been getting along or wasn't getting along with DeLuca for months leading up to even the firing or even before this fall. So it makes you wonder, was there an agenda even coming into this decision that helped maybe accelerate this decision? And the fact is, as I said before, that we have not been giving at least a reason, or at least, other than, a statement saying new leadership required. That's a little shady, in my opinion, I think. And I think it's not good for anyone to know, especially for a person like DeLuca, who spent his entire life, with Cornell. He was a student athlete first who played with them decades ago, then worked his way up to the head coach position as well.
Yeah, I want to bring up the Pennell quote. Rob Pennell, obviously one of the best to ever grace a Cornell uniform, and obviously was the MLL Rookie of the Year last year, and obviously, I shouldn't say obviously, but he did break the all-time NCAA points record previously held by Matt Danowski of Duke. He had this to say about the firing. He said, he was basically dumbfounded that the coach was fired. He told Bloomberg News that. He said, quote, "They had no idea this was coming," in terms of they being the alumni, and are very upset with the news. Just the way everything transpired, it just seems like, how does everything get out, in terms of the Department of Athletics getting their hands on something that quickly then the next day just snap decision, suspending the team for fall ball, which, I mean, they have to take the action because they're a school first, not like an athletic institution, obviously. They're obviously in the Ivy League, one of the ones, one of the top schools in the nation. And then they wait 2 months and say, Ben DeLuca, it may not be your fault, but see you later.
You see, if they had done this, maybe
it's shady, man. Like, I don't know what to think about this. Like, I mean, he was successful. They went to a Final Four last year. I mean, they graduated all their players. They had Rob Pennell last year. Like, they have All-Americans. Like,
and they have they also have such a strong alumni support as well. Like after literally the week of the announcement, look at how many Cornell alumni came out in support of him. That they wrote a big letter that was published in some publications, including Inside Lacrosse. Speaking how upset they were with this decision with the school, and even trying to get him reinstated as well. I mean, there's a lot of support for him, and rightfully so. He was a good coach. He was a good person that really did a good job of preparing a lot of people, a lot of players for, the next step after college. But, you have to wonder, what are the agendas now of some of these, departments. A lot of the coaches now, as we've come to see lately, it's, what have you done for me lately, maybe, or, win now mentality. But you have to wonder, was there anything else involved in here, maybe, that we just don't know about?
Yeah, and I think the other thing that's, like, shady about it is that it's not like all right, let me put this into perspective. For those of you who don't know, I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm just using this as an example for viewers to understand what's going on in lacrosse. So I played at Drew University. We were mid-level D3. We weren't anything special. I was nothing special. I only started 1 year. I didn't play great. Whatever. I'm not going to brag about myself. Anyway, so the year I got there, 2009, we were talking, mingling with people on the team, and hazing was a big issue right then, because the year before, their 2008 team was actually suspended. Their team was suspended. Various members of the team were suspended 4 games each for the first 4 games because of a hazing incident. They told me they didn't do anything. I trust those guys. I love those guys. They're my teammates all since 2009 on. I love all those guys. I totally respect them for what they say. I know they're not lying to me. It was nothing crazy what they were doing, and one guy just decided to be a whistleblower and say, hey, they made me do this. And the kid didn't even play that year. Like he was like walking on or something, and then all of a sudden he just decided not to play, and he basically screwed over the team. And the coach, when we kind of meet with him, like individually, our coach, he says to us, I know you're going to drink. I know you're going to do something. It's college. Like, they're not blind to the fact that this is college. Like, yes, the drinking age is 21. Yes, you're not supposed to drink. The coaches do not endorse that. At Drew, at anywhere else, they say if you are under 21, you should not be drinking. But obviously they know that this is, like, the world, and this is college, and alcohol is, like, easily available from parties and stuff. So it's going to happen. They just say be smart. So you got to wonder, like, did one of the guys get written up by an RA? Did one of the guys become a whistleblower and kind of, ruin it for the rest of the team? I just don't understand what goes on there. And it's not like Ben DeLuca was sitting there like, hey, you got turned up, like, tonight. Like, good job, bro. Like, it's not like he's supporting this drinking. It's not like he's saying, like, yo, go get wasted, and, like, hey, upperclassmen, use this as a camaraderie thing so that these kids can know what college life is about. Like, I'm sure if one of the kids was like, yo, I don't want to drink, they would have said, all right, then don't drink. Like, I just don't think people are that ignorant. And it's not like this guy can babysit these players 24/7. I mean,
no.
You can't do that. Like, you got to trust your players and your upperclassmen to make smart decisions. Clearly, whatever happened, we still won't know, but, like, you get your seniors obviously didn't make a smart decision, or, they really mishandled the situation, and it's not Ben DeLuca's fault to just fire him. I feel like they're just pressured from the press.
Not at all. And I think that's the other pressure that coaches now are facing. Obviously with social media, all athletes are, going to have to be worried because, once it gets out in the public, you're kind of screwed in that sense. But to expect a coach to be responsible for all the players' actions, once they leave campus or once they leave the field, I mean, that's too much to ask. You can't, like, other than putting, like, I'm trying to think of it. The house arrest band on the players, so where they constantly are. Short of anything, short of that, they can't do anything. There's really nothing they can do about it, and to expect them to try, other than teach them right from wrong and try and help them through what they need to, academic wise, life wise, playing wise. The coach can't be responsible. The players have to take some type of semblance of responsibility more than the coach. I mean, it's college. This is the time where they have to start realizing who they are, start growing up as well. And to expect the coach possibly, to pay for the actions of the players that really he had nothing to do with, that's unfair. It's stupid, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people were just like, and the worst thing is, it's not like Cornell, as smart of a place that is and is highly regarded as a university and learning institution as it is, they didn't even give a good reason. They just said, yeah, lack of leadership. That's like the NCAA saying lack of institutional control with the Miami case and just saying, yeah, that's why we're going to keep them out from postseason contention, like take away scholarship. It's like, that's it? Like, there's no specific reason? You're just firing him to fire him? Like, what's going on here, man? Like,
I can respect in some ways if there was some damning information possibly or something they didn't want to get public that might do harm to the university or defamation against the person himself. But you have to give more, at least like hint at something more to give like a better quality reason than just say for better leadership. Because for everything that we've seen, we've read, and we've heard, there's nothing wrong with the guy, and you just fired him for reasons that are your own, that are not favorable with the rest of everyone.
right, and I think I was actually reading, I want to, I guess, hear about this from you, is that there was another incident totally separate from lacrosse and all sports, is that a student actually died. I forget how old this student was, but it was in the report of this story from a fraternity from over drinking, and it made national news, made Cornell look bad. So I gotta wonder, and I gotta ask you, is how much did that weigh into their decision as the athletic department in terms of this? Because I think it was the year before, so 2013, a student died. He or she overdrank. I forget which gender the student was, but he overdrank and got killed. Like, he didn't kill himself. He just happened to do something stupid and killed himself. And obviously the reason was alcohol. So they made whatever actions they had to make to that specific fraternity. So, I mean, John, how much does that weigh into their decision for this, you think?
I think it's a lot. I think that a few colleges in particular are really trying to crack down on that. Like, I came from Hofstra University, and they, over the past few years, the administration has tried to really crack down on Greek life, even though like Greek life at Hofstra is not really that big, mostly because it's a commuter school. But they are really trying to push the Greek life off of campus, really, to try and get away, I guess, that hazing or that type of commitment, when people have to pledge themselves and all. And listen, a few of the fraternities and sororities aren't that bad. They actually do community service. They actually try and, do good things. But you go to like the bigger schools, and that's where, it can get out of hand. Now, I have no experience with that, but I've heard stories, I've seen reports. And I think for a school like Cornell, who's trying, who has that reputation to keep, who has to try and make the best for the university and its students, who are trying to go for a higher level of degree than it is out there. There are higher standards at these places. Like at Princeton, for example, there was another case that, they had to do something similar. I don't know the full details of that, but, everyone's got their own way. But as we enter, another, 2014, the days of colleges, they're trying to be mindful, I guess, of these things and really watch out, because it's gone out of hand and has the ability to get out of hand if you don't have an iron fist to this.
Yeah, and I guess that leads into kind of what we're gonna go into next. We're gonna hit a break here, but you know they're ranked 17th in the preseason poll. Midfielders Connor Buchek, Doug Tesoriero, along with attackman Matt Donovan, are all on honorable mention All-American list. So this team is talented, and we'll talk about the specific rankings later. It's the first time they're outside of the top 10 in terms of ranked preseason rankings for like the second time in the last like 10 years, which is a testament to Ben DeLuca and the job he's done there. But we're going to hit a break here. We're going to try to contact Tom Peace, actually, so we can kind of talk to him about the new talent that's coming in. So we'll play a little commercial here, and hopefully we'll get Tom on the phone and have him come in. All right, John?
All
right.
In Lax Prospects is the elite website for coverage, ranking, scouting, and analysis of the top prospects in the game. With content written exclusively from professional coaches, scouts, and GMs, prospects.inlacrossewetrust.com is the place to be for the future of our game.
Hey, this is Scotty Comer from the Barry Blizzard, and you're listening to Over and Back on the Lacrosse Radio Network.
Lacrosse was meant to be free for everyone. Every week, the Lacrosse Radio Network brings a free lacrosse game broadcast to you. Between Canadian box to professional field lacrosse, we are your home for free lacrosse content. The Lacrosse Radio Network. Lax on.
This is Patrick Crosby, goaltender for the Kentucky Stick Horses, and you're listening to the Lacrosse Radio Network.
Canadian lacrosse has a new home, the Lacrosse Radio Network. From the summer to winter, get all the free Canadian lacrosse broadcasts you can get. With the Canadian Lacrosse League, Quebec Senior Lacrosse League, Major Series Lacrosse, and Junior A with the best announcers around. Tune in to Spreaker.com/Lacrosse Radio Network. In Lax Prospects is the elite website for coverage, ranking, scouting, and analysis of the top prospects in the game. With content written exclusively from professional coaches, scouts, and GMs, prospects.inlacrossewetrust.com is the place to be for the future of our game.
Hey, this is Scotty Comer from the Barry Blizzard, and you're listening to Over and Back on the Lacrosse Radio Network.
Lacrosse was meant to be free for everyone. Every week, the Lacrosse Radio Network brings a free lacrosse game broadcast to you. Between Canadian box to professional field lacrosse, we are your home for free lacrosse content. The Lacrosse Radio Network. Lax on.
This is Patrick Crosby, goaltender for the Kentucky Stick Horses, and you're listening to the Lacrosse Radio Network.
Canadian lacrosse has a new home, the Lacrosse Radio Network. From the summer to winter, get all the free Canadian lacrosse broadcasts you can get. With the Canadian Lacrosse League, Quebec Senior Lacrosse League, Major Series Lacrosse, and Junior A with the best announcers around. Tune in to Spreaker.com/Lacrosse Radio Network. In Lax Prospects is the elite website for coverage, ranking, scouting, and analysis of the top prospects in the game. With content written exclusively from professional coaches, scouts, and GMs, prospects.inlacrossewetrust.com is the place to be for the future of our game.
Hey, this is Scotty Comer from the Barry Blizzard, and you're listening to Over and Back on the Lacrosse Radio Network.
Lacrosse was meant to be free for everyone. Every week, the Lacrosse Radio Network brings a free lacrosse game broadcast to you. Between Canadian box to professional field lacrosse, we are your home for free lacrosse content. The Lacrosse Radio Network. Lax on.
Tom, how are you doing? Good. It's Andrew. All right, we're in break right now. We have about 26 seconds left. I'm going to lead in. You'll hear my voice. You're going to be on speaker, and I'm going to try to play you.
Canadian lacrosse has a new home, the Lacrosse Radio Network. From the summer to winter, get all the free Canadian lacrosse broadcasts you can get. With the Canadian Lacrosse League, Quebec Senior Lacrosse League, Major Series Lacrosse, and Junior A with the best announcers around. Tune in to Spreaker.com/Lacrosse Radio Network.
All that stuff. All right, cool. Thanks for joining us. All right, everybody. Thanks for waiting here. So, we're back here on NCAA Lax Gameday, and we actually are going to try a little something new here since Skype's not working with us too well. But we do have Tom Peace of Top Lax Recruits on the phone here on speakerphone up against my computer. Tom, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, and happy holidays to you guys.
Yeah,
Happy holidays
to you as well. So first things first, obviously you're part of TopLacrosseRecruits.com, where you cover obviously the top lacrosse recruits in high school all over the nation. So obviously Maryland had the #1 class coming in, probably one of the greatest ever considered kind of nationally. And you had Matt Rambo as, I don't know what you had him ranked, but you had the decision between, I think it was actually Rotans and Syracuse's Jordan Evans to be 1 and 2. Where would you rank them as, I guess, the top 2 recruits in the nation? Who do you put 1? Who do you put 2?
Rambo 1, Evans 2, and then Rotans 3. And you can go either way with all 3 of those guys. They're really going to go to their colleges and play right away, I think. Evans has a shot at really seeing the field a lot at Syracuse, and as well as Rambo at Maryland. It's just looking at the body of work for both guys. It's just, you can go either way with the rankings for those 2. But I think Rambo had a solid season this year, and he impressed in the Under Armour game. And all those goals, yes, there's no defense really in that game, but I think you really have to go with him and the way that he's been playing throughout most of his high school career. And like I said, I think all 3 Rotans, Rambo, and Evans are going to have really great college careers, and it's going to be exciting to see how they do.
Tom, what type of impact do you think that all 3 could make at the freshman level? Do you think they can hit the ground running and become key members of their squads this year?
What's that again? I'm sorry.
I said, do you think that of those 3 players, they can make an impact right off the bat in their freshman year?
Yeah. Yes, I think those 3 were brought in as top recruits, and when you guys bring in those type of recruits and you're needing help at those areas, I know Maryland's going to need some help at attack and with Rambo and Rotans, and then midfield and for Syracuse, they're going to need some help with that, and with Evans up there on the attack as well. So I think you're going to see those guys get in. I don't think they'll start, but I see them getting in to, I don't know if they'll start right away, but I see them starting to get in and easing their way into the starting lineup throughout the season, and you could see those guys making impacts like Case Mathias did last year for Duke, who had a really great run down the playoffs for the Duke Blue Devils. So I can see Rambo and Jordan and Rotans having the same kind of impact for their colleges.
All right, so I know a lot of the headlines come from Maryland and Syracuse. I'm sure John will go back to Syracuse. I actually want to shed some light on a different school, Johns Hopkins. I had the opportunity to go down and watch them play in fall ball against UMass and Rutgers and Fairfield. And one of the freshmen that really stood out to me was Nick Fields. I mean, the guy was really athletic, good footwork, really sound defenseman, picked off a lot of passes, and he was actually starting with the starting defense. So what kind of impact do you think he will have for Johns Hopkins in terms of replacing Tucker Durkin?
Yeah, I got to see Nick Fields when he was a sophomore at Bullis and during the summer recruiting circuit, and even then I was like, wow, this kid is going to be a stud one day for wherever he goes to college. And obviously he picked Johns Hopkins, and we all know Coach Petromel loves defense, and that's what he was in college. And so he went out and got a really good one in Fields, and I think you're going to see Nick really flourish in that defensive system that Petromel runs, and I think he's going to definitely see the field quite a bit this season. I know they struggled in defense last year, so I think you're going to see him get some. They're going to get him on the field right away up there at Johns Hopkins. So yeah, I think you could see a lot of Nick Fields this year for the Blue Jays. So yeah, that guy's a really incredible athlete. You're talking about the three guys, Rotans, Evans, and Rambo. You want to talk about the defensemen and Nick Fields. He's right there with those guys, and I think you're going to see a lot of, like I said, a lot of Nick Fields this year for Johns Hopkins.
Tom, back to Evans just quickly. Coming into his freshman year with Syracuse, he's going to be given the number 22, and we know how big of an honor that is to wear that at Syracuse. We saw Jojo Marasco when he was given that, though. He seemed to struggle for the first 2 years till he finally was able to put together a strong senior season. Do you think that might be a little too much, though, for a freshman coming in given that, or do you think he can really answer that right away?
I think speaking of Evans his last year and interviewing him and trying to see how he is as a person, as a kid, and how he is as an athlete, I got the sense that he's a really mature kid, and I think he can take on the responsibility of wearing that number 22. As we know, Gary Gate wore that, and Casey Powell and all those guys did, and so I think you're gonna see Jordan take that torch and run with it the way those guys did, and I see him having a big career up there at Syracuse, and we got some really good guys coming in on that Syracuse team this year as well as I think Randy Stats is coming in as well from Onondaga. So you got some really good players for the Orangemen, and I think right at the top there is Jordan Evans. I think giving him that number 22, it says a lot about him, and it says a lot about the program and the way they think about how he's going to play throughout his career.
So Tom, a lot of for those who are just joining us, this is Tom Peace of TopLaxRecruits.com here with us on Lacrosse Radio Network. So a lot of the focus, obviously and deservedly so, is on those top recruiting classes in Maryland and Syracuse. Shed some light on us and for our listeners about some of the other recruiting classes. I mean, obviously these are all guys that are all just freshmen. You have 4 years to work, work, make yourself better, and will really evaluate a class at the end of their college careers. Obviously some guys that were ranked really high will, disappoint, and guys who were ranked lower will, skyrocket. So, talk about some of the other classes. According to Inside Lacrosse, you have Maryland, Syracuse, UNC, UVA, Duke, Johns Hopkins, 1 through 6. Penn State's at 9, Denver's 11, Brown's at 20, Michigan's at 18. So just talk about some of the other classes. What do you think is kind of like a dark horse team that brought in a really good recruiting class or could progress to be a really good recruiting class when all is said and done?
Yeah, I like Denver a lot, and I know they were put down there on that list a little low there, but yeah, I think Denver, you're going to see them back in the hunt for the Final Four this year, because you can't count Bill Kenny's teams out in the way he recruits and his staff. They're bringing in tons of these Canadian kids, and they can play like guys like Law and all those guys that have come in the past play at Denver, and they're going to bring in some more talent this year. I know that couple of kids they brought in from Canada, and so I think Denver is going to be a really impressive team. North Carolina is bringing some great athletes as well. Stephen Kelly from Calvert Hall is going to be someone to watch at the face-off line. I think you'll probably see him very soon at the face-off X for the Tar Heels in 2014. I'm just trying to think of some other ones that may stand out. I know Michigan has been trying to get their program up and running, and they brought in some really good athletes in the last couple of years with their first couple recruiting classes, and I can see Michigan start making some noise here in the Big Ten, and and they're going to be really impressive. So I think you're going to see the usual top classes do well, like you're saying, like the Marylands, the Syracuses, and those type schools. But don't forget the other schools out there doing well with recruiting and bringing top kids in, and they're going to start making noise here in the near future.
I wanted to ask about one program that's really starting to get some notice, and that's Towson. You know, since Sean Nadelin has taken over the helm of that school, they've really turned it around, with Penn State also not being eligible for the CAA, and they'll be departing for the Big Ten soon. You know, it seems that, you know, the Tigers are really positioning themselves to be, I guess, one of the top programs, or the program in the CAA, like they were 10 years ago. You know, what's it, you know, talk about, I guess, Nadelin's recruitment. Because this year they're 14th in the recruiting class. They got some pretty good guys coming in this year. A lot of good blue chip players.
Yeah, they've been really sticking with the blue collar type guy, blue chip type guys. They brought in Joey Cedar from Hereford. They're doing some really good stuff in the recruiting, and you're going to really see the Towson Tigers get back onto into serious contention for getting into the playoffs, and obviously into the Final Four. They did that. They were impressive last year, getting in there and playing against a really good Ohio State team, and they came up short. But getting back into the dance is really impressive for Sean Nadelin and the Towson Tigers, and you're going to see that team back in 2014 with the recruiting class that they have coming in, and the guys that they already have there. And I just really think that what you're going to see is these guys that really did not show up on that work play high. You didn't really hear much throughout their high school career. Yes, they mostly were like the public side of things, and here in Maryland, but they went out and got these kids that were really good lacrosse players, but weren't getting the recognition from other schools, and then they're going to come in Towson and really flourish, I think, there, and you're going to really be excited to see how they do, and I think that's going to be crucial in how they play this year with this new team that they keep bringing in. And they also had Scotty Rogers, the great goalie from Notre Dame, as a goalie coach for them as well. So it's going to be great to see how he does with the goalies over there at Towson.
Yeah, and I think they really need it after losing Andrew Wascavage last year, who was an honorable mention All-American. Tom, one thing that John brought up, which I think is something we should point out, is there are 4 new programs coming into Division I lacrosse: Furman, Richmond, Monmouth University in New Jersey, and Boston University in Massachusetts. So out of those 4 schools, how are they doing on the recruiting trail, or, you know, how will they do, I guess, you know, forecasting it for the future?
Furman's is doing well. They have Coach Meade down there, Richie Meade, who is highly regarded in the lacrosse world after having a great career at Navy, and he's also the head coach of the U.S. team for the World Games, and he's obviously has a great staff there with David Cohn and some other guys that I know that are really good coaches that he has underneath him down there at Furman. So, and they're getting some really good recruits from up here, from Boys Latin. I know a couple of kids are already committed to Furman from the MIA school. So he's definitely starting to get in the recruits that he knows where to get them. And so I think Furman, you're going to see get off to a good start, just like how High Point did last year, and you're going to see Furman do the same thing. And I like Richmond's incoming class as well. They're going to start doing some work as well, finding some good kids from down there in the Virginia area, that corridor down there from right around that area. They got some really good lacrosse high schools down there. So I think you're going to see Richmond benefit from that, and it's going to be interesting how that works out. And you have UVA down there, and they always reign supreme with recruits down there, but now you have Richmond and they now bringing in lacrosse, so it's going to be interesting how the recruiting goes for in that area. So that's really exciting to see. And Monmouth, it's another good story. I think they're going to have them. They're going to ease their way in, and they're going to take their lumps, I think, starting out. But you're going to see some kids start committing to there and helping out that program as well. It's great for the sport to see more programs start up each year, and you're going to keep seeing that. What I'd like to see is more of the like the BCS type schools out there starting lacrosse, and that would be great for the game to have more of the BCS type schools like Arizona State and then club ball and like the Florida States, the Miamis, like schools like that you'd like to see have more of a lacrosse presence. And I think that's going to be great to see when they can get lacrosse into those programs, because it's great for the sport every year that there's a new program coming out.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely great to see, NCAA lacrosse growing, and obviously, both of us, me and John, and everyone that works here on In Lacrosse We Trust.com is really kind of wanting the sport to really grow into those BCS conferences, and I think the future is bright, especially with football kind of taking a hit with the whole concussion thing. But we're gonna wrap up and hit a commercial here. Tom, thank you very much for coming on the show and talking lacrosse with us. We really appreciate it, and happy holidays to you and your family.
You too, guys, and have a happy New Year, and let's have a great lacrosse season this year.
Yep.
Thanks.
Hopefully we can have you on a little bit later once the season starts, and we'll reevaluate some of these freshman classes. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right, hold on one sec. We're going to hit commercial, and then we'll come back with a little bit of conference realignment. So this is Andrew Goldberg and John Alfonso Iadevaia on Lacrosse Radio Network on Live Talk 365.
In Lax Prospects is the elite website for coverage, ranking, scouting, and analysis of the top prospects in the game. With content written exclusively from professional coaches, scouts, and GMs, prospects.inlacrossewetrust.com is the place to be for the future of our game.
Hey, this is Scotty Comer from the Barry Blizzard, and you're listening to Over and Back on the Lacrosse Radio Network.
Lacrosse was meant to be free for everyone. Every week, the Lacrosse Radio Network brings a free lacrosse game broadcast to you. Between Canadian box to professional field lacrosse, we are your home for free lacrosse content. The Lacrosse Radio Network. Lax on.
This is Patrick Crosby, goaltender for the Kentucky Stick Horses, and we're listening to the Lacrosse Radio Network.
Canadian lacrosse has a new home, the Lacrosse Radio Network. From the summer to winter, get all the free Canadian lacrosse broadcasts you can get. For the Canadian Lacrosse League, Quebec Senior Lacrosse League, Major Series Lacrosse, and Junior A with the best announcers around. Tune in to Spreaker.com/Lacrosse Radio Network.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Andrew Goldberg and John Iadevaia. you wrote Eye of the Tiger to try to pronounce your name, and I totally butchered it again. I'm sorry.
It will take time.
It must sound terrible. But again, welcome back to NCAA Lax Gameday with us here. For anyone that's listening with us, thank you for joining us. And obviously, Tom Peace of Top Lax Recruits had, a great interview with him, had some really interesting things to say in terms of the new programs and their recruits, as well as, the Jordan Evans and how he can carry the torch of number 22. But we're going to leave that topic and go into conference realignment, which was one of the bigger topics here in the off season. John, a lot of movement here, and we're going to go conference by conference and really look at, who's coming in, who's leaving next year, and what's really happening in the landscape of lacrosse. But a lot of action here with, a lot of these teams, right, John?
The tectonic plates are shifting and will probably continue to shift as we really move along in the next year or two. We have the Big Ten Conference coming up soon. That's going to include the usual suspects, Ohio State, Michigan. Johns Hopkins will be joining them as an associate member. You got Maryland. That was a big surprise when they announced that they were moving, along with Rutgers there as well. Penn State leaving the CAA, so you'll have 6 that will be able to make an automatic bid. I think also one of the bigger moves that we got to talk about is Denver going to the Big East, which I'll be honest, I still don't get that move at all. And by them moving and along with the Big Ten forming, the ECAC will no longer be in existence after this year.
Yeah, it really won't. A lot of those teams are trying to find new homes, and obviously the emergence of the Big Ten is kind of hurting that. And I kind of have to agree with you. Like, what is Denver thinking moving to the Big East? You know what it kind of seems like is, remember when Boise State was considering to move to the Big East, and the same thing with TCU? And it's like, you're not in the eastern part of the United States. Like, this does not make sense geographically. You just shouldn't be doing this. Like, you should stay in the Mountain West or join the Pac-12 or, do one of those things. Don't come to the Big East because it's easy, and now you're just traveling cross-country with all these teams from the East. It makes no sense.
It also makes it difficult for travel budgets as well. But, I mean, the Big East has always had to handle that because, you have teams like Marquette, who's in the conference. They're out in Wisconsin. So, these teams have to be able to get ready to move, travel out to there to play games as well.
Right, exactly. So you had mentioned the Big Ten. We'll start in the ACC because one of the members is leaving, my Maryland Terrapins. For those who don't know, I'm a big Maryland fan. But so we'll look at the ACC right now. 2014, this year, Maryland's last year in the ACC. You have Maryland, Duke, Virginia, Notre Dame, Syracuse, UNC. Notre Dame and Syracuse were previously in the Big East. Now they join the ACC. John, is this the best conference in lacrosse, hands down?
Hands and feet down. I guarantee you that these 6 teams are all going to be in the top 10 or at least the top 15 this year. I mean, unless we have an extremely rare year like last year where Virginia fell off the face of the earth along with Johns Hopkins. But, I mean, I expect Virginia to bounce back in some way and be at least in the top 20. But, I mean, my gosh, look at it, man. You could argue we have, 1, 2, 3 with, Duke, Syracuse, Notre Dame. I mean, if Maryland bounces back and finds a way to get some offensive consistency, they could be in that top 5 as well. And, who knows with North Carolina. But, my gosh, man, this is also going to be the first time that they have a legitimate conference tournament as well.
Yeah, I thought the ACC was the best conference even before this because they had 4 of the top teams in the nation, UNC, Virginia, Duke, Maryland. They're always in the top 5, top 8 teams in the nation. Now they get Syracuse, who has won countless national titles and is a great team in themselves, usually ranked in the top 5. And then Notre Dame, who's also usually ranked in the top 5, top 10 teams in the nation. They bring back a great team. And, I think that it's going to make for a really, really exciting tournament come the end of the year, and it's going to be even more competitive. It's kind of like the group of death in World Cup soccer. It just seems terrible for these teams. They're just going to be beating up on each other. It kind of makes me wonder, like, are these teams even going to make the tournament, or are they just going to be beating each other up and playing themselves out of the tournament? You know what I mean?
Well, it helps that they expanded the field to 20 teams now. I mean, safe to say the ACC will not be a play-in league at least, but I think some teams could take advantage of it as well with these teams beating them up. I wanted to also ask you, we also have, along with some shifting conferences, along some realigning conferences, we also have a new conference this year in the Atlantic Sun with Jacksonville, High Point, Mercer, VMI, Furman, and Richmond. That's, I think, in time, could be a pretty exciting conference to watch.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be down this year because VMI, Jacksonville, Mercer, like all those schools are towards the very bottom of college lacrosse. I know Mercer, they just started last year, and they actually hired the Goucher coach from our conference. And Goucher coach is a good coach, nothing, take away from him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he basically recruited 3 All-Americans, and they ran the table in our conference, won 2 straight conference titles, and were ranked as high in the top 10 Division III. I mean, he's a good coach. He knows how to use talent and play to his players' strengths. And it's an attractive university down south. Sun, basically how I think of it, John, I don't know how you think of recruiting and everything, but I think what really helps in some of these southern schools is that, like Mercer, Atlanta, Georgia. What's great about Atlanta, Georgia? Sun. What attracts the sun? People want to play in warm weather. No one wants to go up into the Northeast and play in the snow all the way until April. And when you're in good weather, kind of attracts good-looking girls. Good-looking girls attracts recruits. Recruits come. Good recruits come. You get good recruits. You're going to be a good program. I think teams like Mercer, Richmond, even Furman, I think like all these schools have a really good opportunity of becoming really good, like in time. And I think it would be even better, like going back to what we talked about with Tom, is that we'd like to see all these BCS conferences pull up, like Texas and, USC, Florida State, like all these SEC, Pac-12 schools that are in the South. Like all those schools traditionally have like good party schools, amazing, warm weather, good-looking girls, like great academics also. Like I'm not going to be, a jerk and ignorant person and say like, oh, like, lacrosse players are just into like, good-looking girls, hot weather, and the beach. Like, look, all these schools are really good academically too. Like, Texas is one of the top public universities. But anyway, getting back to the Athletic Sun, like I think all these schools can grow in time because of that fact.
And the advantage, similar to Southern baseball, college baseball teams, is that, if the weather is good, you have a full year of playing outside. Whereas, the Northern schools, their disadvantage would be, the inclement weather. I mean, you don't want to go outside and practice in like 20-degree weather. You're forced to go inside. Your schedule can change, or you might not get to practice at all with the stick because, there might be 6 inches of snow on the field and you can't do that. Whereas like, the Jacksonvilles or the Richmond or Furman, they'll have better weather out there. They can manage that at least. I mean, look at the female girls lacrosse, women's lacrosse, for example. The Southern teams are starting to take off, and they just started only a handful of years ago. Like Florida, for example, they're really kicking butt right now, and they're a fairly new program.
Right, and I think that's something good to look forward to in terms of Division I lacrosse when some schools consider like, hey, can we compete? Because that's part of that's probably part of the thing. And I think you brought up a good point earlier, which I'd like to really harp on before we kind of like breeze through all the other conferences because we only have 6 minutes here. But when we played at Drew, it's in New Jersey, lots of snow, it sucks. And you cannot play outside in certain conditions, so you go inside. And also, you're not the only sport trying to use an indoor facility. You got baseball, you got basketball teams still going, you have women's lacrosse, and you have softball. All these teams are trying to get ready for the season inside, so you have crappy lacrosse times. You're getting up at 6 a.m. and practicing at 6 a.m. Like, who wants to practice at 6 a.m. inside, like, just running on basically pavement on the inside, and you're trying, as a goalie, it was probably the worst thing to practice in because you're trying to track a white ball in the light off a white stick, and it was just a nightmare. Anyway, it's just not productive to what you can do. It limits what you can do as a coach and what kind of drills you can do in terms of actually seeing guys hustle because you're in a confined space. You can only really do like 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, all that stuff. So I think that, like you said, being down south, it allows you the opportunity to be outside and really get through everything.
Let me ask.
Having a full practice.
Let me ask you some. Moving to the next conference,
Right.
Patriot League. They have 9 teams this year with Loyola and Boston University joining.
Right.
I think that's really going to hurt this conference. I think as early as this year, possibly, because not having 8 teams, that's understandable. We saw that with the ECAC last year, but I mean, this year 9 teams. What that's going to do is really hurt teams' ability to really put the teams out of conference schedules that they want. Not to mention, like, some teams might have to jam more games than they want in, like more midweek games, which could be detrimental to the health and benefit of some of these players. And at some point, the league might have to start to think about a divisional thing with this league. This is going to be a lag, I think, for the Patriot League, which was arguably one of the more competitive conferences a few years ago, actually, and really has the potential to be, I think, honestly, in that top 3 on like a good year.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. I think comparison for those of you who like really follow sports is the SEC. I mean, or even the Pac-12, but we'll look at the SEC. The SEC has like 16 teams in it, so they split into 2 divisions. You have 8 teams, and they play so many of each other because they want to keep rivals, and they're like all the southern teams are basically rivals with each other. So they basically play like a 9 or 10 game schedule against SEC teams, and then they play like 4 out of conference games, and they're usually like cupcake games against like God knows what, like freaking Southeastern, like Mississippi State A&T. Like you have all that. Anyway, getting back to lacrosse, I think that this is a dark horse to be one of the more competitive leagues, because Lehigh is a top 20 team. Loyola is a top 20 team. Navy is a top 20 team in terms of their name brand, not so much the last couple years.
On a good year, Army is a top 20 team as well. And don't forget Bucknell, too.
Right, exactly. And Colgate. Colgate was really good 2 years ago when they had Peter Baum. They had Peter Baum last year, but they just didn't kind of put things together. But it's a pretty competitive conference, and I think you're really set up, especially with Loyola joining, is that now a team like Bucknell or Lehigh that was kind of dominating Patriot League, especially Lehigh, back-to-back Patriot League champs, Loyola may take over that conference, and they're not going to be too happy about it.
Nah. Quickly, I want to get your opinion also on the Ivy. Obviously, we discussed Cornell before. I think their biggest with all the seniors gone, with DeLuca gone, and everything that's gone on, I think the biggest thing that's going to hurt them, not so much bodies gone, but leadership. I think there's a massive leadership void that they're not going to be able to recover from this spring. So I would not be shocked if Cornell somehow ended up missing the Ivy League tournament.
In terms of a bold prediction, John, on a first show and making a real impression, I'm going to say Cornell has a losing season this season.
I think it's possible, honestly.
I think it's very possible for all the reasons you mentioned. They lost Rob Pennell. They lost Max Van Borgian, whatever you say his name is. And they also lost the other midfielder. What's his name? Stephen Mock.
And don't forget also their goaltending as well as A.J. Fury and Jason Noble as well on defense.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, they lost a lot of talent. They bring back a little talent. They just lost their head coach, who's a good coach. And all this controversy and stuff they have to answer. And obviously the Ivy's really competitive too. Princeton's top 10 team. Just to make a really quick note, I really like Penn in that conference. They bring back everything on defense basically except Anthony Santomo, the honorable mention All-American LSM, and everything like that. I mean, we kind of have to get off right now because the next show's coming on. But Denver joins the Big East, just to run through everything really quickly. Penn State, as you had mentioned in the interview, is now ineligible for conference tournament as they're moving to the Big Ten. So that'll be interesting from an NCAA tournament standpoint. And Bellarmine is also moving from the ECAC. So I think it's going to be really interesting. And, John, I think it was really good, first show for us. We'd also like to thank Tom Peace once again of Top Lacrosse Recruits for coming on with us. John, great first show. Hopefully we can do this again next week.
Hopefully so, sir. Good job today.
Yeah, You too. Happy holidays to you, and of course to our listeners, happy holidays to you as well.